Hello everyone, and thank you all for attending today's CREATE webinar brought to you by the Center for Bioengineering and Biotechnology. This webinar is being recorded for the benefit of future CREATE trainees. I am Kenrick Bassel, Program Coordinator for CREATE, and it is my pleasure to be hosting this webinar. I will begin with a territorial acknowledgement. Much of our work at the University of Waterloo takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is centralized within our Indigenous Initiatives Office. Today's webinar is part 3 of the 4-part QMS webinar series and is presented by our special guest, Abdul Khalfan. The title of today's webinar is System Level Testing and Maturity Grid Risk Level Concept. Mr. Khalfan is a quality management systems professional with over 30 years of experience in quality assurance, product development, and validation. Also reliability engineering and continuous improvement. Mr. Khalfan provides consulting services to medical device companies, helping them to establish and implement their quality management systems, ISO 9001:2015, ISO 13485:2016 medical devices standard. Mr. Khalfan has worked with a range of companies, including NCR, AT&T, Flextronics, Bell Howell, ITT, First Data, Teledyne, Comdev, and of course, our very own KA Imaging. On behalf of the CREATE program and the Center for Bioengineering and Biotechnology, thank you very much, Mr. Khalfan, for being here today.
Thank you, Kenrick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kenrick. I appreciate your generous introduction and your kind words. Appreciate it. So good afternoon, academia, scholars, scientists, researchers, CEOs, CTOs, co-founders, engineers, managers, and I apologize if I did not address any other titles there. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Quality Series webinar at the University of Waterloo Center for Bioengineering and Biotechnology. This workshop, as Kenrick mentioned, is the 3rd in the series. The first one was basic quality concepts, and the second one was product lifecycle. And today we should go through 2 sessions, which is system level test product qualification / validation. The qualification, validation, they both mean the same. The reporting and the failure log, and then we will talk about the maturity grid concept of minimizing the risk when we are trying to release the product. I hope you all are doing well and keeping safe in these testing times. So feedback is very important. Feedback is important because based on that, only then I can improve. You will see this slide which says welcome, and right underneath it says the computer screen is not frozen. So in my last presentation, product life cycle, I was giving a preamble of about a couple of minutes or so, and the screen didn't change. They didn't see anything there, and the participants thought that the screen was frozen or something was wrong. So like I say, you live and learn, and I learned from the feedback, and I appreciate it very much. The other thing that I need to mention is that as much as I can try, or I did try, to not crowd the slides that I have to present, but unfortunately there is a lot of subject to be covered in the limited amount of time. So I apologize, I've tried my best, and if you see some of the slides that you have too much information, but I will be with you, I will try and explain the entire slide verbally so that you don't get sort of lost. All right. The last thing that I'd like to mention is, once again, your feedback is very valuable to me. So please, at the end of the session, do provide your valuable feedback. Okay, so The first thing that we should be doing in the system level test that I like to do is to, I'm just going to see if I can, Kenrick, can you take the thing off there, maybe if possible, that little part that comes on my screen, but it's okay. All right, so the definitions. What is the definition of a system? A combination of several components or pieces of equipment integrated to perform a specific function. This is out of the Quality Dictionary. Now, the system can even be a standalone product. Why? Because you have several components, modules, assemblies within the device. You have the power module, the memory module, the Wi-Fi, so many other modules given the specifics of your device. Now, a little more elaborate definition is that generally an organized, interconnected, and united collection that is self-sufficient in its intended customer operational environment and capable of either performing or supporting an operational function or both. A complete system may require any or all of the following for its operations. And the reason I went into this is, if you bear with me, it'll come to light that how important it is to do the systems testing. So what are the ingredients of it? Accessories, power cords, extension cords, USB cords, assemblies, complete operating equipment, component parts, equipment, material. Here's where I would like us to pay some attention and focus. Personnel, procedures, related facilities, what type of environment you're working in, temperature cases that are involved, services, skills, software, techniques. So you can see that just the standalone system or the device is not just the one that is being tested, but there are so many other things involved with it, which will make sure that your product is meeting the requirements of your customer environment. And we will go through it as we move forward. Now, why system level test is important? Because we have to collect factual information, collection of factual data. Data is extremely important. Objectivity versus subjectivity. We want to be objective. We want to be honest to ourselves. We want to be truthful to ourselves that whatever we are doing, we are giving it our due diligence to make sure we are moving forward with actual facts that we have at hand. And it removes the bias. So, example, now here's the thing. This is human nature. Whenever we are involved in developing a product, a system, or even any other subject matter besides work, when we are questioned for what we are doing, how we are doing, why we are doing, and what is the conclusion, we all get very defensive. And we want to make sure at that point in time, we as human beings want to question ourselves and question the person who's questioning us, that did the person test the system properly in accordance with the test plan? Was the test case properly written? Was the environment proper? Was the temperature right? Was the humidity right? Was there an EST mat around when you were testing? So these questions come in. And in the systems test, we try to minimize the bias as much as possible. There may always be something that we didn't do right, but then we want to make sure that the person we are reporting to or the group that we are reporting to will have the minimum amount of questions because we did everything the proper way, and there should be no ambiguity in questioning the result of the test. And you will see how we get into it. And the real important thing is that at the end of the day, we as a team all have to agree upon the data that we have collected. The data has to be agreed upon. Once we have that agreement, then it becomes relatively easier to progress through the product life cycle. We will briefly go into the product life cycle, and I will show you that example. Addressing issues collectively as a team. So the team has to agree that we have a problem, and the problem is because of this, and the problem is a regulatory problem or a safety issue or any other type of category of failures that we identify. It is the oneness of the team that we are looking for. We need a collective agreement. And I'm so proud today that I know there are scientists, there are CTOs, there are CEOs, there are some of them are co-founders who have taken the interest to be part of this. Typically, once upon a time, the management was not very much interested, but now I see a dramatic change that the chief of the companies want to be part of this QMS. And that's an excellent, excellent progress that we have made. So having said that, with that definition in mind, let us proceed with the next slide. All right, methodology for establishing and maintaining reliability. This process should be based upon process management and improvement methodology that I will depict in the following picture. Why? Because the important thing is this approach creates a focus on the relationships between customers and suppliers and identifies the attributes of all the required information and data for the development and manufacture of reliable products. So what is that model? The model is this. Now you may say, why do we go through this picture, this model, these elements? We don't even know what it is. Well, I'll make it short and simple. One of the main reasons I am putting this picture up, this model up, for two main reasons. Where you see customer requirements and you see supplier requirements, customer is not the end customer. Customer can be internal customer. Supplier is not the external supplier chain or manufacturer. We have internal customers too. Now you see that little round circle over there. What that is design and development, because the test process, this workshop that we are going through is focused upon design and development of a product that comes out that will meet all the requirements that were set forth with it. Having said that, so bear in mind, we are constantly in the design and development process, we are constantly going through internal customers and internal suppliers, and we will see that. There are different teams that are here. You can see management, planning, management review, documents and records control, the whole 9 yards that make up the company. So the big picture that you see is the main company organization where you work or you're in charge of. Then underneath it, you have all these sub-processes, and one of the processes is design and development. Please bear in mind, we have internal customers and we have external customers. We have internal suppliers and we have external suppliers. Moving forward, let's see, and this system level testing, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand this. This is very common sense. And it, as I said, we want to remove the bias. We don't want anyone to say, hey, you didn't, Mr. Scientist or Mr. Engineer or Mr. Manager or technician or whoever, you didn't follow the rules and you didn't test it properly as you move along, then it is too late. If you have gone testing the product for some time and then you find out that it was not acceptable by the team that you're working with. So here's the, bear with me, don't worry, I will zoom in here and you will know what are the boxes related to. Okay. The first section is to do with the pre-checking of the system as it comes in. The second section is the pre-test. Before, we haven't started the test at all. We are just in the cursory mode, the preliminary mode. We haven't even gone into the details of really testing the product out. Formal test. Then we go into CAPA system. I think I would say almost all of you have heard of what CAPA is. CAPA is very corrective and preventive action system. This is consistent in any ISO standard, FDA, regulatory, or any other QMS that you go in. CAPA is at the forefront. Now, you will say, why, Abdul, why did you come up with this process? Working in product qualifications for over 30 years, I have stumbled across, I have gone through the blocks where I have come into discrepancies between the acceptance of the test results and the acceptance of the progress that we are trying to make. So, to remove the bias, as I said, I'm going to zoom in on, oops. Okay. So what happens is that what you want to treat yourself internally within your organization, within your company, you assume that you are going to be qualifying a product with the customer, not assume that you're qualifying the product, but that you are the end customer, that you are the end customer. So I have a device, I have a product, and I have released it, and now you are the customer, and you are going to release my product. So what would you do? You would receive the unit, you would unpack the unit, you would test the unit. That's simple as from the customer point of view. But here's what the system test does. When you see that word EVT, different companies have different acronyms that they use. EVT is Engineering Verification Test, which comprises of prototype units. It can comprise of design verification, design validation, alpha test, beta test, pre-alpha test. So do not get worried about the name that you're seeing over there. EVT was used at one of the companies that I worked for, and that was Engineering Verification Test Units. These comprised of mainly the prototype, or that was the beginning of it. But this process flow you can apply at every step of the product life cycle. So let's take it from step one. We receive the units. We unpack the units. We record the basic information of the unit, the serial number, the software version. One thing I notice in my experience is most of the time when you do the test and you produce the test results, the first thing that the engineers will look at is what type of software version was used. And bang, right there, if you don't have the right software version, you are out. You are out. You need to go back. Okay, so you record all this good information, and here's the crux of the matter also. How many times we receive the units to be tested from your contract manufacturer or from other manufacturers, or you as a customer, that you see the packaging was damaged. You may see that the unit inside was okay, but was tilted. You may see the unit inside had the bottom panel fall off. We need to understand that. But what was happening at the different companies I worked, what was happening was all these observations and you may call it failures, were sort of taking it with a grain of salt and said, let's test the unit. You're jumping the gun. You're putting the cart before the horse. Because if you go on testing the unit, somewhere along the line, you find that the unit did not perform. Is it possible that the transportation caused this problem? Is it possible the packaging was not good? So you want to take that bias off. So then you also record the visual inspection results in the test report. And I'm going to go. So now the pre-check is done. So there's a decision box which says, does it pass the visual inspection test? Yes or no? If it does pass, great, hallelujah, we move on. Conduct a functional test as defined by the customer requirements. Bear with me, and we will, in the next slide, you'll have a glimpse of what the customer requirements be. Does it pass the functional test? Yes or no? Now, when I say the functional test, do not be surprised, or you already know. When a device is being produced or being constructed, or the requirements are taken into consideration, that there are 100 test cases that we need to test the product with. They can be 50, they can be 10, they can be 75, depending on the complexity of the product that you're dealing or you're developing. You can have, as I have dealt with a product, that there were 125 functional tests to be tested to make sure that the product was built accordingly. You record the test results in the test report, and I will show you the template next. Does it pass the specified test as per the criteria? Now, when you are receiving the unit, you are basically testing it just to see if the basic functions are functional, if the basic nomenclature or the outlook of the device that you're testing is okay, that it is not damaged, that the packaging is right, that the aesthetics are okay, the cosmetics are okay, and you have made the decision that we are going to test it now to greater length. So what do? We conduct the functional test as defined by the customer requirements. It passes that. You set up the unit to conduct the test, and this is a yes. I cannot go further because the slide has been zoomed in. So then this is the box that you see that you continue testing the unit for other tests that were there. But there are certain number of preliminary test cases that we test before we go into the details in the nth degree testing for the device or the product. So you continue testing the unit for other EVT tests as required, or repackage and package the test. And sometimes you need to keep some of the units as golden units. So let's go over here. And because if it said that it does not pass the basic functional test as specified with the criteria, then what happens? Then what we do is we go into the CAPA system. You input the failure into the failure log. I will show you the failure log with failed units, basic and failure description, and other pertinent details. As much detail as you can provide why this unit did not pass the test. Therefore, we have an issue. Therefore, we are going to raise a CAPA. You report the failure to the appropriate team for failure analysis. Is it an engineering failure? Is it a supply chain failure? Is it software related? Any type of failure that you have, that you communicate with that pertinent team. Then if it is agreed upon, yes, it is a failure, then you look for the root cause. Has the root cause been identified and a long-term solution available? Root cause is always the long-term. Sometimes you may come across the root cause solution right off the bat. Most of the time you will not. In that case, we have a short-term solution. And that short-term solution is implemented to move forward. In the meanwhile, in the background, the root cause is being investigated. All right. Then if root cause, we were lucky enough and we went through the root cause. By the way, the rule of the thumb is if you ask 5 times, why, that will bring you to the root cause. Sometimes it may be 10 times, but rule of the thumb is 5 times. So say we found the root cause. So we go to the next step, we implement a long-term solution, we retest the unit to validate the long-term fix. We must do that. And then if the long-term solution is effective, then we close the failure. But if not, if the root cause is not found, then we go into this section here, which is basically, is there a short-term solution? Yes. Implement the short-term solution, you retest the unit, you validate the unit fix, and you are happy with it for the short-term solution. But as you see, the arrow, this connection from this block goes back here that go find the root cause. Now, if you say there is no short-term solution, you go back to the appropriate team, you work with them, and that's how we will solve the issue. Now, this is, again, bear with me when I show you the detail of it, but at this point in time, you have qualified the unit to go into further testing, and everyone agrees that the unit is fine. Now it is legitimately okay to go into the next 10 or 20 tests that have been assigned in that particular phase of your product life cycle. So what happens here? I promised you I will share with you the, okay. Okay. The test report, the details of the test collection, and we have to be meticulous in documenting the test cases, because the test cases will attest for themselves that the product is being built in the appropriate manner according to the product requirement document, according to the technical specification. So here is what the test report looks like. The first section is the basic information. What's the name of the product? What's the serial number? Which build is it? What software version was used? What was the test date? What type of test equipment was used? A multimeter. Remember I said we all ask the right questions for the right things, but we do get protected. I may be testing a unit with the multimeter that is not calibrated, or the oscilloscope that does not provide the detailed information. There are several types of oscilloscopes, which I'm sure you folks know about it. So that's the basic information. What was the temperature of the environment? What was the relative humidity? What were the test locations? All this information, it's like you are standing up in the court of law and your prosecutors or your lawyers or defense lawyers are asking you all these questions, because if we fail to answer these questions, trust me, the case can be thrown out the window. So we want to cover ourselves. So what's the next step? This is the test setup information, which I just talked about: the temperature, relative humidity, environment, test location. Was the precondition followed through? Once we do all that, then we come into the test procedure. What is the test procedure? This should be documented in the test cases. The test procedure is step 1. Position measurement microphone device 1 meter from face of the device under test. DUT is device under test. This was a speaker. I'm giving you an example of a speaker. Then what was step 2? Set the device under test, DUT, volume to maximum. Third, apply a sweep sine wave to the target source from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Then you adjust such that at 1 kHz, the measured volume is 85 dB. So on and so forth. So you make sure the lab that is testing your product, or the engineer, or the test or validation engineer, or the technician that they're testing to all those facts. Then what was the outcome of the test? You see the results there. That was the test procedure. This was the test output. Your pass-fail criteria. This is the most important. Everything is important, but the criteria is the most important. If we do not have a criteria, we do not know if we are doing good, bad, or otherwise. We must, not should, but we must have criteria every step along the way, in every single test case. I cannot emphasize it enough. But having said that, this is all of the report. And then it happens. Going into at the end over here, I apologize. I'm trying to. So at the end is the result, and if the precondition specifies the state of a system, and you say it's a pass or a fail, and you put any kind of notes over here. When you see it, when you have the time and you want to go revisit the workshop, you can see it on your laptop. I'm trying to put it as big as possible. So at the end, you have notes and you have test agreements and what have you. But let me see if I can. So I'm going to read. The last bit of this says notes, test precondition. What was it? Was it okay? And there are other notes underneath. This section is basically of the notes, which notes can be anything that you desire that should be included. So we went through this. So do not be afraid if you have 50 test cases or 100 test cases. You have to have enough test cases to make sure that your product is going to meet the customer requirements. And to meet the customer requirements, very briefly, the entire genesis, if I may say so, of a product commences with the marketing requirement document. The marketing requirement document will come back to the management for project approval by saying that, look, there is a market for this device, the window is this, we have X number of millions of opportunity for sales, our revenues will be this, and our reputation will be great, and we will meet the market requirements. That's how it starts. Then if it is approved, the next step is PRD, Product Requirement Document. The product requirement document goes into details of what the product should have. What are the features? What are the functions? What are the aesthetics of it? What is the footprint of it? So those details get into the product requirement document. Then you progress to the technical requirements, technical specifications. That's how we get into the making of the product. Now, this is the failure law. I just wanted to make sure that we all understand that how the product starts into the development cycle, and I will touch base on it very shortly. in the next session about the product lifecycle. All right, so let's look at, this is a very detailed failure law. And the failure law is very, very important in the sense that this is your baseline for claiming that the product is working or it is not functioning. And it takes, okay. As much as I try to zoom in, okay. Okay, we are going to zoom in here. So what you see is, it is quite laborious, but it is well worth it. You can't do without this failure law. Now you may say, I'm not going to go through this, I'm going to go to Jira. Sure, Jira is a software you can go in, but you still have to enter the information. The information is gathered right from the system level test that we went through the last couple of the 3 slides that we went through. You can't go into Jira or any other software, Zephyr, or depending on what software, there are so many on the market. But those softwares are good enough if you know what you want out of it and what input is needed in there. Having said that, the input is no different than what we see over here. Again, here it is, item number, PRD, Product Requirement ID Test. Identification test number XXX-123. That's the test case. What was the software? What was the category? Was it electrical? Was it software? Was it mechanical? Was it industrial? Was it supply chain? Unit under test, the serial number of it. The module assembly, the part that is affected, PCBA, printed circuit board assembly. That's because I was mostly involved with high-tech electronic devices. That's why you will see these names over there. Defect description, short in SMT, surface mount technology. There was a short there. Immediate cause, soldering was shot. Immediate solution, remove the short. You remember that in the last slide, we talked about kappa, root cause, and the immediate solution. What was the root cause? The SMT process needs improvement. It was the failure on the surface mount technology process that it did not process. So we need to improve that. In the meanwhile, we had a short-term solution and we removed the short and life was fine and we went ahead. So then you modify the SMTC process. I have a name here saying Gavin to check with NPI team, new product in production. That's the team that works with manufacturing and the design team. Actions, immediate actions. New failure mode. Now that's a very important subject, but then you need time to talk about it. So when you're testing units, say you were testing 30 units, and you see this common problem in all of them. So it's not a new failure mode. But if you see a different failure, then that's the new failure mode, and we have to be very cognizant of the fact that we need to take the new failure mode very seriously. As I said, that's a different discussion, so just bear in mind that we need to keep a track of the failure mode that happened, keep a track of that failure and see if it happens again. If it does happen again, then it's a repeat. If you see a different failure of the same nature or sort or any other, then you record that as a new failure. And when you do the key metrics, you will find the value of it. Then here, down here, you see the risk level, high, medium, or low. And we are going to talk at length about the risk levels. On this flow chart, what you are seeing is that we are putting up on the front the failure status. There were 10 electrical failures. The root cause we found was 6. The root cause, root cause not found was 6. The root cause found was 1, 7. 3 were closed because we couldn't repeat it or something that was agreed upon that we don't need to dig into that particular failure. But again, it's a team conclusion. And we were talking about what is the open failure status, what's the open failure status, and then we are talking about the risk level. We haven't talked about the maturity grid because this process of system level test will connect with the maturity grid. That is so important. Every single QMS or ISO standard you can think of, I can think of, will always, always, always ask for risk level. What is the risk involved in these failures? Is it okay to move forward? Is it a very low risk? Or is it maybe, maybe not? Or is it a very high risk? Stop. Don't do nothing. We need to solve this problem. So this is what, now don't worry about these because I had some formulas and macros in there to come up with these line images that you're seeing. Okay, having said that, so the first part that you see over here is collecting basic information, same as we did in the report section. Over here, we are looking at the defect reporting. In this section, do we know the root cause? What was the process that was doing it? Or what was the part that was part of the problem? It can be any number of things. That's the defect reporting. Then we went into the monitoring. Who's going to monitor what? What is the test scope? Is it a reliability issue? Is it something that, example, if there was a intermittent short, would this impact the reliability of the product? Certainly. It may work and it may not work. And then the customer may be calling you 10 different times. Oh, I have the same problem. But the problem is that it's intermittent. It happens and it doesn't happen. I'm sure you have seen many in your lives that you've seen problems come and go and then you cannot pinpoint. So this is where we address it. So that's the monitoring. Who's going to monitor what? And then at the end, we do an analysis. Now, here's the beauty of it. Beauty of it, of the failure, not that we want a failure log, not that we want any failures, but the thing is, how do we learn from what we have gathered through key metrics? And the key metrics are in this form. Okay. All right. So, failure report key metrics. So whatever laborious work and the important work, it may be laborious, but it is very, very important that we collect this information. Why? Here's what it'll give us. It'll give us failure category, open or closed. Was the root cause found? Was the root cause not found? Was it electrical, mechanical, software, service, manufacturing, operator? Just from that single failure log that we went through, what was the risk level? Was it low, medium, or high? And this is the risk level. We will talk about it in the next session. The total failure. Was it repeated failure? Was it new failure? Which we talked about. Unit under test failure mode. Was it the EVT? Was it the prototype? Was it the prototype number 1, prototype number 2? Because the design team is constantly making changes. Or, you are playing in the sand, which is fine. But this was known as EVT1. Now we made some changes. Or this is EVT2, but we are still in the prototype phase. We haven't come out of it because we will see how we come out of it in the maturity grid concept. These are intricately connected, both system-level test and the maturity grid. Again, I am not restricting anyone to do this manual failure log. If you feel comfortable with some software because you folks are great on all high-tech stuff and computer savvy, go ahead and do your own thing, but collect the data. You can make a dashboard, but then that data has to feed into the maturity grid, which is the next one. Failure in the test, then failure mode, test scope. What was the test scope? Was it functional, performance, interoperability, hardware compatibility, software compatibility, platform security, serviceability, reliability, agency safety? Was audio integrity, AVL approved suppliers, approved vendor list? Is it because of that? And then, how do you compare failure comparison, the test scope? There were more failures, reliability failures in the DVT, which is design validation test. So there are so many of the data, so much of the data, valuable data that we can collect, that we can emphasize to the team. Are we on the right track? Do we need to improve? And how are we going to move forward? That is the crux of the matter. So having said that, I think we have come to the point where we deserve a short break for the cause. So before we go for a short break of 10 minutes, let's say, the importance of measurement. If you can't measure something, you can't understand it. If you can't understand it, you can't control it. If you can't control it, you can't improve it. And this was Philip Crosby. He was one of the quality gurus. For those of you who have participated in the previous two sessions of mine, you will always see that I will always put this chart at the end of the session. To tell you the truth, this whole world is about measurement. Our whole life is about measurement. How do we fare? What did we do when we were children? What did we do when we grew up to be teenagers? How did we measure ourselves? There is measurement involved in when a postman comes to your door and knocks on your door. I mean, it used to be. Postmen don't come to the door anymore. We lost that privilege a long time ago. But say FedEx came and they knocked on the door 3 times. That's a measurement. So measurement is every step along the way. Having said that, I think for this session, this is how far we will go. So take a break. My Alexa is telling me that it is 1:52. We can come back after 5 after 2. Would that be good, Henry?
Yes, that sounds good. And I'll just ask attendees not to log out, so keep logged in to the session.
Yeah.
That way you won't have any problems getting back in. So just take a break, refresh yourselves, have a drink, get some exercise, and we'll come back for the second half of this presentation.
Yeah, and thanks for the feedback. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken this break. I tell you, because I can speak for 2 hours, 3 hours, and not take a break, and that's not good. So enjoy your break.
Okay, see you all back here at 2:05. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, Kenrick, let me know if you can start.
Give them 30 more seconds. It's 2:04.
Sure.
Okay, everyone, it's 2:05. We will now commence the second part of the presentation. Mr. Khalfan, you can begin whenever you're ready. Thanks.
So thank you, Henry. I hope everyone had a short pause for a good cause. Here we are. This is the second session. Now you will see as we move forward that this is connected with what we just went through the system level test. We need to embed a discipline within ourselves, within our organization. The discipline to do the right things so that we can be proud of releasing a product that will be world class. The impetus that we should have is that we want to make a product that will be beneficial to the humankind, that will be beneficial to this planet Earth, of course, in all an ethical manner. That is the impetus we should work with. And when we do that, that is the only time we will have the credence, the confidence that we are at ease with ourselves, that we did everything within our realm of thinking, our work ethics, and the organization that you deal with that discipline, we have released a product that will be beneficial to humanity. Having said that, this is so what I'm trying to get at is the discipline. If we don't form the discipline within our organization, we can be all over the map. I'm not saying we would do it for the wrong reasons, but if you don't organize, if you don't discipline yourself, if you don't plan it out, what are the steps that we are going to take to release a product that will meet the customer requirements or it will exceed the customer requirements? But then you are aware of every step within the product lifecycle. So this is the second step. After the system level test is done, it's conducted, and now the units are ready to be tested further. Here is what happens. It is known as the product quality management or product validation. The maturity grid, its acronym is PQMMG. Let's quickly look at the table of contents. I give you 30 seconds to just skim through it, and then we'll move forward. All right. So as we go through the slides, you will see those titles there, and you'll make sense of it. Okay. So let's look at some of the obvious questions. But the obvious question that one should have within his or her company, within the organization, if you are the founder of it, if you're the co-founder of it, or if you're part of it, then what is the current process at Awesome Company, that's your company, to qualify a product for advancement through product life cycle stages until its release? And bear with me, I will just hold on to your thoughts and I will put up a pictorial view of the product life cycle. Firstly, it is a basic question that we all should question the design development team or the product validation team. When and how do we qualify the product that is ready for release? This is what this is all about. When the rubber meets the road, what happens on the sixth bar of the symphony? When we are in the product development cycle, we need to be cognizant of every single move that we are making and careful moves. Our product performance risk mitigated through product life cycle. So here we come to the risk part of it. So we may see 15, 20 failures or even 50 failures. You'll be surprised if I had a chance, I would show you the failure log that's like 1-inch thick with all the documented failures. Anyways, so what are the protocols that are used to mitigate these issues and move forward to the next stage in PLC, in the prototype stage, or the design verification, design validation stage, the product validation stage? So we need to understand what processes you to decide either way if we move forward in the development phase or not. And this risk mitigation, this maturity grid, will be the catalyst. It will be the conduit to make sure that we have done the due diligence and the right processes have been put in place to move from one stage to the next. Now, who makes this question? I'm sure it must be racing through your mind. Who makes the final decision in each of the PLC product lifecycle stages for advancement to the next stage in the product design? Is it the electrical engineering team? Is it the mechanical engineering team? Is it the software? Is it the industrial design, packaging, transport, user interface? This is a very important question. And why? Let me explain to you. When we go through the product life stages, every morning or after the tests are done, every morning or afternoon or every other day or so, we collectively meet with the design development and product development and product validation team to agree upon the problems that we have seen the day before or in the present time. We have to have a collective agreement. I cannot say just because I'm the product validation manager and I saw this problem and I recorded it, that means this becomes holy grail. No, this is not cast in stone. Abdul's decision is not cast in stone. It is the team. So I give you an example. I was going through a very high-profile project, and in this high-profile project, every single morning I sat down with the director of engineering, with supply chain, with software managers, and even director of the top teams, and also the managers with it. We sat together. We went through every single failure that we went through, and we all came to an agreement whether this will be classified as a serious risk, as a medium risk, as a low risk, and you will see how we move with the next slide. So it is a collective decision. Now, it has happened. I have seen it happen all the time, that if we have, say, 6 different teams participating in it, one of the team doesn't agree. That, look, I don't believe that this is a high risk. I think this is a very low risk. And that is fine. That is fine. Everyone has their opinion to their conclusion. But this is where democratic voting takes place. This democratic voting will say, well, 5 of the 6 team members agree to this, unless this person who doesn't agree proves it otherwise, that it is a low risk, then we will move forward for now. Now, later on in the test, we might find that this person, this engineer, this manager, this director, was right in his rights to state that it was a low risk. And that is fine. But then, to start with, it is a collective agreement. And then we go back and we meet again. So we have to be very conscious about the fact that one team's decision is not going to be the only decision. All right. Now, there are several tools available to assess and manage product risk through its PLC, product life cycle. There are so many tools out there in the market. It's like umpteen of them that are there. If you were to Google and say, show me the maturity grid or or give me the risk management tools, you will see so many. What I am presenting to you is the experience that I have gone through, and this to me was the most simplest form of tool and a very practical tool, which is the maturity grid that I'm presenting to you. This now, for you, this may or may not be the right tool, but what I'm again encouraging you is to come up with a discipline, come up with a process. I am not saying that just use this maturity grid, but when I show you, you may change your mind. So there is maturity grid. You've heard of failure mode effective analysis, which is FMEA. The risk plot, I'll show you an example. Mean time between failure, service calls per machine per year. You see those arrows going back and forth. Mean time between failure, service call per machine per year, they are one and the same thing. Now, in my experience as reporting to the management for several years, what I found was whether we were in the design mode or we were in the field where the product was there, the data analysis, the statistical analysis showed me over and over and over again that 45% of the failures were related to design. Then there was, let me see. Then there was manufacturing was 25%. You probably cannot see here on this slide. 25% was manufacturing. 10% was service. Maybe the service engineer was not properly trained. Then there were parts issues. Oh boy, I've been through some nightmares. You imagine when you know for sure that there is a part that is not good and you ask for the replacement of the part and the stock room sends you a brand new part that is defective. You put that part in and now you go in circles. So that has happened several times. Operator-related errors. Now, these operator-related errors, again, if you don't train the operator right, if the operator is not experienced, between 5 and 10% the operator-related failures happen. So that's another way of assessing your risk. But then you have to dig into what went wrong in design and what happened. Then you have extensive checklists of all major items related to the release of the product design to the next stage. And I will share with you all this. All this what we've seen here. Before we get, I'm giving you all this preamble to give you some inclination as to this maturity grid example is not the only thing, but there are others. And you have to choose. You are the boss. You're going to choose what suits best for you and your organization. So here we go. You see, these are risk assessment examples. Half-stack risk. The risks are very likely, likely, unlikely, very unlikely. Risk matrix. What you don't read here is very low, low, high, and very high. So that's the thing, and you see all these dots in there. Now, the reason I put this one, trust me, I've never worked with this, is the risk difference at 95% comparing drug A with competitor, and it is known as the forest plot. Hold on, I will show you the next slide as what it means. And the reason I put that plot over there, or that this plot over there, is because I know you folks are biological scientists, you folks are related to the medical field, and you would be more interested to see what's available as far as your biochemistry is concerned, biological information is concerned, and how do you progress to vial, to assay, or what have you. I'll be honest with you, I am working with one or so, but I will learn more and more. But that's the reason I put that plot over there. Then you have risk assessment matrix, which is not critical, significant, future continuing operations. Then you have extremely unlikely, likely, extremely unlikely. Here's a financial risk plot. These are all have to do with the risks that we are dealing with on a daily basis when we are in the design and development stage. And you have to choose which one. Product limit survival estimates with number of subjects at risk, 95%, all valid products. So this is another medical thing. The survival estimates are critical factors in clinical and patient decision making in all phases of a serious life or death thing. Let's look at the next slide. Here is some brief explanation. I will give you a minute or two. You read through this, and then I will focus on these two, FMEA, failure mode effective analysis, and this checklist, just give you some brief background to them. All right, so it all depends what you've seen that right up here. I tried to give you, and I just didn't want to show you the slides and then you make out of it, so I did my best to give you some background to what these different plots were and assessment risk plots were. The FMEA, that is the next session that I will have. This is widely known, well known. It's not only widely known, but it's a well-known tool that you use, which is known as failure mode effective analysis. What is the input? What can go wrong with the input? What is the? It is more also like a failure log. But then we have to come back to one simple conclusion, whether we move forward or we don't move forward. Then here you see this is a checklist, and I will put up the checklist. It's a very detailed checklist before the product is released. These are about 3 pages. PRP, product release process. So when we are going through different stages, we have boxes to check, okay, low, medium, moderate, high, and you go through the planning process, market and product fit, business case. This is the very first stage, remember? MRD documents and PRD documents and technical specifications. Then you have product fitness, IP and GIP. This is the term that we use at the company. Expected status of product release. Product again, now you're looking at the environment, the temperature, humidity, stress. Did we do those tests? Did we pass? Did we fail? Are we going to improve? Product fitness GPI specific. So in your case, in the biomedical field, you will have your specific acronyms and different forms of tests that you design, and then product certifications. You go to ISO certification. Then you also talk about certification from your company point of view. Can it be installed without problems with the EMC? Susceptibility, EMC is a very important test. Acoustic noise, these are standards that we need to meet. Internal product safety certification successfully completed. And then at the end of the day, you have this overall risk. It's the technical risk, the schedule risk, and the dependency. Now you can do it this way. I mean, nothing stops you. You can do this even if you go through the maturity grid. But I just wanted to bring about to you the status that we have been talking about as far as the maturity grid is concerned. So, as I depicted here or in the slides, we have several tools. You choose the one that best suits your discipline or your company, or you can design a test system, just like the way I did. And I did it based on my experience, whereby I was, or my team was always challenged, oh, you folks didn't do it right, or the temperature was not correct, or the multimeter was not proper, or the oscilloscope was not proper. So you have to take into consideration what your organization is all about and what are the key ingredients, key parameters that you must adhere to. And so I showed you some of these examples. And now I had talked about the product life cycle. Why I waited this long is this is where I will show you the product maturity grid comes into play. So please, at the moment, focus on this part. So it started with the concept, feasibility, architecture, planning, what have you, and then we get into the phase of R&D, industrial prototype, and product validation. So let us focus on these parts here, where you have prototypes, you have engineering verification, you have design validation, you have NPI, new product introduction, and as I said before, NPI is a conduit, is a catalyst between the manufacturing group and the design engineering group, or the design group. It's not only design engineering, the design group, and also the supply chain. So we will focus on what happens in the three stages, the three important stages. Every stage is important, but this is where the maturity grid comes into play. R&D, engineering, prototyping, design verification, industrial prototype, also product validation comes here. And then this is when you have the confidence in the manufacturing processes, that the processes are ready to manufacture your product the way you have designed it and for your requirement. So this is a very quick snapshot of the product life cycle that I had presented last time in the webinar, which was 2 hours. For those of you, this may be a recap. For those of you who have not been part of the product life cycle, I will encourage you to access the webinar, which has been taped from the U of W. Okay, so what is the history of quality management maturity grid? It was first brought into being in 1979. Motorola has also adapted this. Philips, that's the company, also adapted this. Then again, there are three main gurus of quality that are well known even today. One was Dr. Deming, Dr. Julian, and Philip Crosby. So, and God bless their soul, they are no longer with us, but they have left their legacy with us. And this was conceived in 1979. It's used by business and organization as a benchmark of how mature their processes are. Remember, we're not talking about individuality. We're talking about processes. The processes, how mature are your processes? How mature is your design process? Are we missing something? Or are we on the right track? And how well they are embedded in their culture with respect to service and product quality management. The quality management grid describes 5 mature levels. The 5 levels are uncertainty, awakening, enlightenment, wisdom, and certainty. The first one was uncertainty, and bear with me, we will correlate it with what happens in our real life. How does uncertainty, awakening, enlightenment, wisdom, and certainty play a role in what we are going through? And we will talk about it very, very quickly. Now, after this maturity grid came into being, for those of you probably have heard of CMM or CMI, Capability Maturity Model. That's basically a software life cycle. And it has 5 stages. It has the initial stage, repeatable, define, manage, and optimizing. Now, process management and improvement model, which I shared with you in the system level design, has 5 steps also. It's about the ownership. Who owns this process? The definition. Have we defined it properly? Have you defined who the customers are? Have you defined what the inputs are? What are the tasks? What are the boundaries? So that's again is a 2-day workshop, but I'm giving you a snapshot of it. And 3, the measurement. What are the measurements required within that process, the control and the improvement? Having said that, let's move forward with the next slide. So what does the maturity grid do? We are getting closer and closer to what our main object and subject is. What does it do? It determines the status, the risk or problem. A table is made for each step to see the severity of it. The severity is the key. We need to know how severe it is. Is it serious enough to stop? Is it okay to move and work on it? Is it a very low risk? This is what the maturity grid will do. Now, when do we use it? We use it in every single phase, and we are going to focus on the 3 different stages that I just flashed that slide across the workshop, where it talks about the prototyping, the engineering verification, the NPI, or the design validation, and then, of course, the manufacturing processes validation. Now, industry has progressed a lot. One time in my days, the manufacturing was done where the design was done. Now, that was easy, that you could control manufacturing, you can speak with them and what have you. These days, as far as I know, at least 8 times out of 10, the design and development group does the design and development. The rest of it, they have manufacturing partners. This is why these standards, ISO standards and all that, they emphasize heavily on the fact that you need to create partnerships with your manufacturers, with your supply chain, with your stakeholders, because the world is different now. It is everywhere that you need to coordinate with. So, having said that, we need to be cognizant of the fact that how we are communicating with the manufacturing of the product. It's a very important subject matter. So, the last stage before you release the product is your design has been validated and your manufacturing processes have been validated. When both of these are validated, which includes the supply chain and what have you, then only we can proudly release the product to the market and have the credence, the confidence that we have done the right thing, and we are confident that this will be good, add good value to the marketplace. And the marketplace is human beings. It can be the planet Earth. It can be everything that you are gearing up to. So what is the description? It's a list of technical problems, processes is generated that must, not should, or should be solved before progressing to the next stage. I will correct myself. It must be, and there are times when it should be solved. Why I say should is based on the risk level that we are going to go through. A table is made for each item. The table consists of the severity of the problem and the evolution factor. This table has 4 columns and 4 rows, and we will look at it. The table indicates the overall maturity of the product during its product life cycle in real time. Now, I'm going to go back to where I said must and should. More than not, it should be a must, and the should comes into play depending on the severity of the issue that we are dealing with. Sometimes the company is willing to take the risk and say, we are not going to look at this issue now. We're going to do it in our next phase when we go in the redesign of it. So right now, we can still move forward without hurting our sales or without, it can be an issue with the functionality of the product. It could be an issue with the aesthetics of it. It can be an issue on many different levels, but then we need to keep that flexibility, and the big guys make the decision You can make your statement, but the big guys will make the decision based on the data that has been collected. Okay. Now here comes the. I'm going to share my thing. Pardon me, my cell phone is going and it's not stopping. Sorry about that, but what can you do? Technology is everywhere and it disturbs you. I apologize. Okay. Although I had told my family not to call me, there we go. I need to put some controls in place to make sure what is the root cause of them calling me. Okay, maturity grid example. I'm showing you, this is the beauty of it that I personally like. Every phase that we go through will be the same, okay? Will be the same. It will not look different. The only thing that will look different are these red blocks here that bear with me and I'll show you in the next slide, and the number of occurrences. Other than that, this maturity grid looks the same, unlike other risk models that become different shapes at different times. Now, failure categories at the system level. Do you remember I said there are so many functions that are involved in your device, in your system? So the categories that are tracked are safety, regulatory, compliance standards, design, hardware, software, industrial design, manufacturing, reliability, functionality, user experience, service, packaging, transportation. Based on all of these and any other that I may have missed out is when we as an organization, we as a company, we as a team make the decision that yes, we are going to move forward, or no, we are going to wait till we resolve the problem. So let me focus on here. Sorry about that. Oh, what you see here is 4, 3, 2, 1. This is the point where it's better known as evolution. How did this issue evolve? So you have the first evolution is 4. Root cause of the failure is unknown. There's a problem, but we don't know why the problem. What is the root cause? Root cause of the failure is known. No solution is available. We know what the root cause is, but we don't know how to fix it. And that's fine. So the next level is solution is available, but not tested yet. We have a solution. We know what the root cause is. We know what the we know what the failure is. We know what the root cause is, and we know what the solution is. And then there are blocking points, or there are doubtful points. You see this doubtful points? We saw some failures, but we could not repeat them. So they may have, it's benign cause. We don't know why it happened, but it happened, and we'll keep a track on it. We have logged it, and if it continuously happens, we look after it. So how we move from one stage to the next, to the next, to the next is root cause. We identify the problem. Root cause of the failure is not known. Failure is known, and we have no solution. And so the corollary of all of this, we can say that the problem has been identified, the root cause has been identified, the failure is known, we have a solution, we implement the solution, and life is fine after that on that particular issue. So, and bear with me, when we go to the next slide, you will see what we're trying to come at. Then, across here, you have S, A, B, and C. S is for safety and regulatory. It is an important issue. It is a safety issue. We cannot forego it. We cannot overlook it. That's the most serious problem. Safety and regulatory. If our device needs to meet some regulations, and we see an issue because of regulation, that is safety and regulation. That's a no-no. That's the biggest, highest place that failure can occur. I mean, it may be that the device has a issue where the customer may have a shock, like the wires are exposed, or something that we did not notice when we were designing the product. Then we have A group. A group is, okay, as we are dealing with the medical team here, or medical students, scholars and academics, scientists, and the likes of it. So that's the safety part of it. So say the imaging detector, dual imaging detector, X-ray detector. The X-ray detector was found with a problem that it gives overexposure to the customer's health. Now, that is not a good thing. Again, I don't know the intricacies, the details, but the exposure by the X-ray detector is above the limits that have been assigned to. That's a serious issue. Then, example, if it was not a serious issue, that did not happen, and you look at A, this detector takes the pictures, but the pictures are not very clear. So every customer will return it. If the pictures are not clear enough, the customer will return it. That's not a good thing either. That's the red zone. You cannot move. Then you have the B section. The B section is some of the customers may ignore the issue. I mean, you know, that may, they say, well, our work is being carried out, we are serving the the cause of it, but we don't know, I mean, we are not going to return it just because something happened that really doesn't concern our operation. But they did notice something that happened that should not happen. Now, I don't know what the example may be in that case, but if it was a regular device, I can give you the example. If it was a speaker, if it didn't make, there was a safety issue, straightforward. If the speaker didn't speak, if the sound didn't come out, every customer will return. Then there are customers who say, you know, the integrity of the sound, the stereo voice or the stereo sound that comes out, I'm not really pleased by it, but I can manage. I'll stick with it, and I'm not going to return it. Then there are customers who are picky like me. Even a scratch, I'll take it back and say, I paid money for the full brand new product. I need my value for it. I'm going to take, because when I go to buy a watch, I request the person who gives me the watch at Costco to take it out of the box, and I look at it, because sometimes the customers have bought it and they return it and they give it to another customer. So I look at the condition, and if I see something that's not right, I return it. Okay, now that's me. Sometimes it's not good. So let's see how we calculate these points. You see this 235. So the first thing is, let me see if I can. First thing is, I'll have to come out to show you. I think you can see it on your screen. It's not too bad. All right, the indicator value, it is right here. It shows 235. All right. So let's look at it. How do we calculate? The first problem we saw was safety. So what was the status then? Root cause of the failure is unknown. Something happened that is safety related, but we don't know why that happened. So that is the evolution. Then the value of it, the evolution, the S equals 20. Then the number of occurrence, there was 1. So the formula will be 20, which is the value of S, times 4, which is root cause was not found, and the number was 1. So the total in this case would be 80, right? It should be 80. So then you go with the same. You have A, there was 1. There were 5 in B. In evolution of 4, there was 1 in the evolution of 3. So we calculate the same way over here. It was the A value is 10. So 10 times 3. B was the root cause of the failure is known. They knew what the root cause is. And it happened once. So that one, that would be a 30. Then so on, we would move to 5, which is category B. The value of B is 5. So you see the calculation here. It's very simple and plain method. It's not something that you need a very deep calculation, but it is very simple. So having said that, let's look at in a more specific way of what all this is. So the root cause of the failure is unknown, which is a 4. Root cause of the failure is known, it's a 3. But no solution is available. The solution is available but not tested. So we have a solution, but we haven't tested. That's no good. I need to see the evidence. This is the court of law. I need to see the evidence, so don't talk to me. Solution is available. First tests are positive. However, it is not yet implemented. But we haven't implemented yet. And then the solution is implemented, and we all live happily together for that particular problem. So safety issue or non-compliance standards, that's the S, S4, S3, S2, S1, and then this is completion. Same with A, A4, A3, A2, A1, A0. That means you're done. B, B4, B3, B2, B1, you're done. B0. C, C4, C3, C2, C1, and you've completed. Now, let's look at the bottom section of it. Failure status versus evolution. So, root cause not found. Root cause is all over the map. The bottom line of resolving any issue, any problem we come across, it has to be because of the root cause. We need to find the root cause. Then root cause is unknown, root cause of the failure is known, no solution is available, and root cause available but not tested. Okay. And then solution is available, first tests are positive, however, it is not implemented. You remember I talked about the 5 stages of a company that goes through the uncertainty, awakening, enlightening, wisdom, and certainty. So when the root cause excuse me, is not known, it is uncertain. The company is uncertain. We are uncertain. Root cause of the failure is known. Oh boy, now our eyes open. We know why it happened. Solution is available. That we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, enlightening. And then the solution is available, and we have tested it, and we have gained the knowledge and the wisdom as to why it happened, how it happened, and now we have the solution, and we finally come to the certainty state. So those are the 5 levels that we talked about in one of the slides: uncertainty, awakening, enlightening, wisdom, and certainty. All right, moving forward. So I talked to you about the red zone. So there are 3 zones I said to focus on: EVT or prototype or whichever name, alpha, beta, and whichever names that you prefer. So when we are in the prototype stage, the only way we will move forward to the next stage, which is the EVT stage, is if we have 0 issues here. Anytime we have any issues in any of these functional blocks, that's a no-no, that's a red sign. Now we'll go into a little bit more. And the reason is because known reason. The root cause we don't know. And again, If there are 0 failures here, then the corollary of this is that the root cause is known and we know what the solution is. And then we move forward. Now you come to the DVT state. You want 0 failures in all these quadrants. You don't want to see any, you want to see 0. Why? Because you know the root cause. You have obviously identified the solution and you have tested the solution. So if you can prove, you can provide the evidence that you know the root cause of the problem, you know the solution, or you knew the solution, you have the positive results, you implement it, and now you're all hunky-dory. But if you have anywhere, one or here or here or here or here, you cannot move from this stage to the next stage, which is the product validation stage and the manufacturing processing stage. Then we move to, if we find we are fine here, now we move to this stage. This is the stage where the rubber meets the road, because this is the stage we are going to release the product or not release. We need to see 0 failures in 2, 4, 6, and 8. All these 8 quadrants, we must have 0 failures. No failures allowed here. But if you see any failure in this part, we cannot release the product. So let's look at what does it entail. In this first quadrant, no safety or critical failures without identified solutions. This is just what I explained. The green light is all assigned test cases completed and no failures in red zone. Now I'm going to focus on not only the failures, but it is the number of tests. So hypothetically speaking, your device has 100 tests outlined, 100 tests were documented. In the prototype stage, you must conduct and complete 75% of the 100%, which is 75 tests should be completed. And you should see no failure in these red zones. Only then you say your prototype life cycle was successful, and therefore we move to the next stage, which is the DVT stage. Okay, all assigned test cases completed and no failures in red zone. You remember I talked about it just a while ago. And the assigned test cases should be 90% of the test cases should be completed of the 100% or the 100 tests that were identified, and you should have no failures in this red. Then we have all assigned test cases completed and no failures in red zone. Assigned test cases completed rate greater than 95%, but less than 100%, and no failures in red zone. Now, it's a tough call. 75% of the tests, 90% of the tests, and 100% of the tests. But that's the due diligence we have to do. Now, you may come up with a decision that we are not going to do 75%, we are going to do 60% or 55%. But you have to have a valid reasoning behind it. Why? Can you prove to me that if I don't do 10% of the extra tests that I should be doing, that we can still move forward? Are we going to do it after and it has no impact? But that's what the team has to work out with. Now, I'm going to show you why I talked about the number of tests, the progress, and what is happening. So here is a screenshot, or this is one of the maturity grid level test and completion status. So I've just took an example of what we saw. In week number 12, we had completed 43% of the tests. In week number 11, we completed 45%. In week number 12, we completed 55% of the test. So this keeps, so the blocking points, the 235, it would be different, and I'll share with you very shortly a detailed maturity grid. So we track this and we show it to our team, to the management. What impresses me the most is that when we talk to the management and we show this one simple maturity grid, it speaks volumes. It talks about whether, the management most of the time do not have the time to dig into the details. They want to see the progress in one slide. And this is where I have found my team, our team, to be successful in convincing the management team and the rest of the team that we are on the right track. And now the decision is that we are moving forward. So this is the one. Now I'm going to show you, share with you a detailed maturity grid, failure log that depicts the maturity grid. This is an actual log that, if you recall, the last failure log I showed you did not have the maturity grid snapshot. This one does. Why? Because we detailedly and then we design the failure log in such a way that it captures this gravity, A4, A4, A0, A1, B1, to B0. This was a very detailed failure log. So all I'm trying to show you with the time slot that we have, that you have to make the decision which type of a failure log you're going to go with. And you can see here, actions/JIRA comments. So this failure was put into JIRA. You may say, oh, well, we are duplicating, it's redundant. Why do we go in JIRA and we do this? I'm telling you, my experience has shown this manual labor failure log will never, ever let you down. Will never let you down. This will always be your side. You can sleep well because you have documented everything the way you want it to. Now, you may spend a lot of time in Jira or any other software package, and you make a dashboard and what have you. To be honest with you, when the dashboards are presented, most of the time they are not clear to me. This is something plain and simple. It's about taking the categories, the root cause failures and all that in this slide. Let's see if I you see it goes right up to here. And this is where we are. This grid will be by your side. It'll be an ally for you, that whenever you're talking to any of the teams, you have the proof, you have the matter at hand, and you can show them that this is how we came across. Having said that, I'll go back to our slide here. Oh, no, I'm going to stay here because I want to show you something important. So that's the failure log. Then the gravity mix. We try to explain to the team that these were the gravity mix that we just talked about. These were the milestones that we were looking at: prototype, validation, and the release. Then test. Here it is. This is even not too bad. It's not crowded, but I have a slide that we tracked for 52 weeks. Anyways, you see we start with 0%, and there were 600 blocking points. Then we move, and these are different stages: DP1, DP1 plus DP2, then DP2A. The permutations and combinations is up to you. Nobody stops you from that. And how we progress, and how this maturity grid has progress. And there are, in DP1, we did like 92, 93% of the test cases. And we had about over 300 blocking points, right? So this is where test completion data, so this is where I pick up the data from, and I make this maturity grid. And that automatically shows up. I mean, you can design your failure log the way you. So that this is what it's a very useful chart and a valuable chart that you can demonstrate. Okay, so what is the next step? This is the flow chart, but I'm not going to go through this flow chart. If later on you have the time at hand and you go back, visit University of Waterloo CVB site, they have recorded this entire lecture and the slides. You can go through it and maybe you'll come back and say, hey, I'll do you this something different. I'm a human being and I may have missed, and I'm always eager to learn. Okay, so this is that was my last slide, and I say thank you very much, appreciate your time. It's a long weekend coming up, and in an afternoon you spend 2 hours with me, so I highly, highly appreciate it. I thank you and have a great day and a long weekend. Thank you. That's it for me, Kenrick.
Thank you, Mr. Khalfan, for a fantastic talk. And we have some time for a few questions, so I'll open the floor to questions.
Sure.
If you have a question, please click on the hand icon and I'll unmute your microphone. Or you can also write a question in the chat and I'll ask it on your behalf. Okay, I have a question from Smita. This was from the beginning of your lecture, Mr. Khalfan. She asked, who are the internal customers? I think you had mentioned internal customers.
Yes.
Yeah.
A very good question. I appreciate it. The internal customers, as I said, your design team, your supply line team, your mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, industrial engineering, your management also, your project managers, everything that you come across within your organization that you are aware of, that they are aware of what the product development is, they are your internal customers. And never, ever ignore the internal customers. They have very valuable information and advice as you move along the test. And you will learn through the internal customers. You always learn. So internal customers, as I said, when we make the decision collectively, whether we move forward or not, this is where the internal customers, internal teams made up, which are our internal customers, is made up of. That answer her question.
Smita, did that answer your question? Yes, she said thanks.
Thank you.
There's a question here from Haresh.
Okay.
Read it. Haresh says, thank you for this comprehensive session. I have a question regarding the CAPA term used in the process flow. He says, if I remember correctly, from the previous session, CAPA is practiced in case of failure reporting in the established or launched product. If that is correct, is the CPA used during EVP1? Is it the same as the CAPA used in sustenance?
Yes, sir. Again, a good question. CAPA, excuse me, CAPA is a result of the failure log. So every time, now I'm not saying every issue is a CAPA. So what we go through system tests, we go through every single stage. Yes, the problems that we identify, we don't have a solution, we don't know the root cause, we don't know the solution to it, and what happens, that becomes a CAPA. So CAPA is a result of documenting within the failure log. And it is up to the discretion of the team whether you're going to consider that as a CAPA or not. Because you don't want to overwhelm yourself with 50 different CAPAs. It may be the case. But CAPA has to be very consciously and very seriously thought about. Is there a value to raise a CAPA? There may be a situation where you think, yes, we can overcome this, we know what the problem is and all that. And if that does not happen, then by all means, yes, raise a CAPA. So CAPA is your friend to solve problems, to monitor. Now you have recorded everything, now you need to monitor. So monitoring CAPA is a report that goes through different stages. The issue, the one line for the team that is dealing with it, a short-term solution or long-term solution, but you're monitoring it. When is this going to be complete? So CAPA goes every step along the way, except that you and your team have to make a decision. Do we raise a CAPA for this or not? This is what we have to make the decision. But raising CAPA, you can raise every single issue is a CAPA. All right, that gets some light or?
Irish, does that answer your question? Yes, he says thanks. Thanks. Any more questions from the audience? See if there are any hands raised. Check the chat again. Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
It's a bit more general. You showed several risk assessment examples and tools that could be used, and I know that it's dependent on the product or the industry that you're in. Yeah. But just sort of based on your experience, what advice could you give for which one we should really choose? Like what factors should we consider in choosing the risk assessment tool?
Well, obviously, I'll be biased, but no, I'll come to that later. But it depends on the complexity of your product that you're dealing with. Example, it's a medical device, but the maturity grade is common to all. So my advice to anyone would be take advantage of the maturity grade, but in the background, if you want to deal with this like a forest plot or survival plot, or if this is, and I don't know, I've seen so many of these, but I can't see how I can progress from one stage to the next. But people do, in one of the companies, I had this. We didn't have nothing, but we meticulously, religiously, and went through each and every checkbox, right? But it didn't give me a quick result saying, do we move forward or not? I have to go through every single box. But to answer your question, I would say my personal, because I'm more used to it, maturity grid is very common. It's very common to all, whether it's a medical device, high-tech device, mechanical device, or whatever the device is. The maturity grid will make the shape for you, will give you a baseline. Now, in the background, in the details, if you're, like I showed in the system level, if you collect all that data, you can come up with key metrics. So some of these are key metrics. And I even showed you that one or two of the companies I worked, they didn't know anything about this. They just had the criteria based on mean time between failure, or in other words, service call per machine per year. They would say, this particular device will fail, trust me, this is going way back, will fail 10 times in a year. Well, nowadays that 10 times is gone. So it's based on service calls per machine per year. So if your product, you do the math as you progress through, like with prototype example. Here's a company example I give you. In the prototype stage, if your product passed at the 45% confidence level, which is the chi-square level. So there was a lot of stats that went through, and we looked at the number of transactions that were processed, and then we calculate based on, based on proportion of it. We would say, okay, based on what we know now, the service call per machine per year will be 20, right? On 40% confidence. Then you go into the next stage, which was the B stage in this particular one, or 60%. So you need to pass your test with 60% confidence level, which means from the 20 failures you had, now it should be maybe 15, right? Now you progress, you need 60% confidence level. And the final stage was 80% confidence level. That means now your product should be 10 or better. So that's how you go through the gradation of coming down on you. So that's the meantime. So companies do this. Companies go into failure mode effective analysis, which is this guy here, that they, just like the failure log that I had shared with you folks, this slide, this failure mode effective analysis is a very common one, and I'm sure some of your participants already are aware of it. They go by this. They record all the failures. They look at the RPN, risk priority number. In other words, severity times the detection times the occurrence. How severe is the problem? How easy it is to detect the problem? And what's the frequency of its occurrence? So you may have a severity is high, but the detection is very low. Like, problem may be happening, but you don't find out, depending on your functionality of the equipment. Or something is happening, but you don't find out immediately. You find out later on. And how many times does it happen? It might happen 2 times. It might happen 5 times. So you calculate the risk priority number. Based on the risk priority number, the companies make decision as to which of this problem or which of these problems must be addressed based on the budget, based on the severity and all of that. This is how some of the companies go through their different cycles of their validation. But if you look at what I had presented, it has a very thoughtful process that you go through. You don't just go through when you find the problem. You go through the system level tests, you go through the COPPAs, you go through what the severity is, you progress in a very systematic format. This is what I find the most beneficial with this maturity. But there are many ways that can be addressed.
Thanks. We have 2 questions from Allah. First question is, who's responsible for implementing this system level testing approach in a company?
Excellent question. I would say, now, like I said, these days, CTOs, scientists, they are all interested. But primarily, it comes from the QMS or the QA person like myself or the team that is there. Now, you will say, hey, my team is only 5 folks. Well, within the 5 folks you have, you appoint one representative that you say, help us out with the, okay, you're a scientist, you're doing wiles, you're doing assay, or whatever you're doing. That's fine. We want you there. We are not going to take you off. But you're going to have a dual role. You're going to learn about QMS. And this QMS, he or she learns, and then that's the person will recommend to the team or to the upper management saying, we should adapt this. Or when I say adapt something, adapt a discipline, that is the key. Like I said, what I have spoken or presented is not the holy grail. It is as long as you have a discipline that best suits your organization company, then you should hold it. So to answer the question, it typically comes from the QA representative of the team. after they have groomed themselves to some of these methodologies.
Okay, and the second question is, what percentage of devices in the market has gone through such comprehensive testing?
Wow, that's a good question, but I think I worked for over 15 different companies, and I know I know 3 or maybe 4 of the companies that have had some discipline of going through this methodology. I presented this concept to Bose. Everyone knows about Bose speakers, right? A very, very recognized speaker company, or well-recognized company, Bose. They immediately adopted this process. They found value to it, and they went with this. But to answer the question, I don't know the figures, but not many. Not many. This is why I encourage every participant to give it a thought. Okay, if you don't like this, or you don't want to go this much detail or whatever, but come up with a process, come up with a system, discipline yourself. But again, answering the question, I don't know the numbers, but not many do. Based on my experience, not many do. They go through it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, no. They, all I'm trying to say is companies do it for whatever reason, but I haven't seen the discipline that they go with.
Hello, says thanks for your answer. Any more questions from the audience? Okay. Well, if there are no more questions, that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thanks again, Mr. Khalfan, for a fantastic lecture discussion.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Please don't forget to fill out the feedback.
Well, they're required. Well, certainly the Create trainees are required to submit reflection forms.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's part of the requirement for the Create program.
Okay.
And there will be a recording, probably posted next week on Learn. So if anybody wants to view the recording again, they may have additional questions, and I can perhaps email them to Mr. Khalfan, and maybe
I'll be happy. I'll be honored. More than happy to answer.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I have to learn too. So, like I say, I don't. I'm always eager to learn.
And thanks for staying overtime and for accommodating additional questions at the end. I really appreciate that. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everybody who attended to relay my thanks that you're so accommodating.
You too. Have a great weekend.
Okay, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay safe. Enjoy the upcoming long weekend. I'll just remind you that part 4 of this QMS series will be in 4 weeks. So we'll get to hear the conclusion of this fantastic lecture series. Thank you all again, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. So now I can stop sharing. Okay. Huge. And